We are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Printavo University. We are talking about ink today. As always, we'd love to hear who's watching, where you're at. So how about you pop in the chat and say where you're watching from? Let us know who you are and where you're watching from. I'm Nick out here in sunny Los Angeles. Actually, not sunny at all today. It's quite overcast. But we've got a really exciting one. This is an interactive webinar, so we don't want to just talk at you. We want to talk to you. You can ask questions throughout the webinar by clicking on the Questions tab. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a blue button that asks you to ask a new question. You can do that as we're watching, and we're watching that, so just ask a question. Ask away, anything you want to know. And we got an amazing guest today, but of course, as always, we have my lovely co-host. And I got to give him a big congratulations because he got engaged last night. So congrats, Matt. Everybody give a round of applause for Matt Marcotte here. Huh?
I know, right? I'm amazed too. She said yes. What was she thinking? She'll learn. No, I appreciate that. Thanks for all congrats, everybody. It's great seeing it where everyone's coming from. I think the furthest one right now is Norway. So Daniel, that's awesome. Thank you for joining us from Norway. Place I've never been and hope to go at some point. But I'm excited for today. We're talking to a great guy who knows a lot about this industry and even more about the product that he's with. So without any further ado, I want to introduce Aaron Blank of Monarch. What's up, Aaron?
Good morning, afternoon, or if you're in Denmark, I have no idea, or Norway, I have no idea what time it is there.
Is it always nighttime there? I don't know how that works at all, to be honest.
I think this is the season where it's actually sunny 24/7. So
yeah. So Daniel, I'm sorry for our ignorance out of the gate, but thank you for joining us. Awesome. But no, seriously, thank you for joining. So today, folks, we're really gonna dive into everything ink related. I mean, we're all using it. I mean, there might be some folks that you're doing embroidery and you're not doing screen printing, but I think we're gonna have a lot of things to talk about that are going to be not necessarily only about ink, right? With dealing with manufacturing, dealing with distribution, all sorts of stuff that is relevant to kind of across the board.
Absolutely.
All right.
We'll start out with an easy one, huh? Aaron, tell us who's Aaron and what is Monarch Ink?
Or sure. What is Aaron and who is Monarch Ink?
Exactly.
Either way is fine.
Well, I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Monarch Color. Monarch Color is an ink company that has been around for roughly 47 years. We started, 45 years. We started in 1977. Mainly focused on the offset and flexo industry. About 10 years ago, as the offset and flexo world page count started to wane a little bit, we knew we needed to diversify. And I, having a textile background, specifically in digital textile, as well as manual textile, we decided, hey, textile is probably the best route to go. And our idea was, hey, if we're going to create an ink, it can't be a really good Me Too product. It's got to be best in class. And I think we've done a really good job of doing that over the last 5 years.
That's awesome.
So the plan was, and I think it's important to look at this because I think businesses can do a couple different things. You can either say, hey, I'm going to be a premium and this is all I'm going to offer, or you can say I'm going to offer everything from the economical to the premium. Thinking about this in more layman's terms, right? I can sell the t-shirt that everyone wears every day and goes in the top of the drawer, or I can sell all the t-shirts you buy at the concerts, you wear once, and it's the 20 shirts underneath that top shirt in that drawer. Either way, you're making money, right?
Yep.
So what was it about the approach to say you only want to make that premium product? Was there thought behind that? Was it more of look, we don't necessarily want to be the utility, we want to be the premium? Tell me a little more about what that thought was and where you think your product lands in that spectrum too.
Sure. So we didn't really want to go to market and be someone different than who we already were. So in the offset world, if you can't get it to work with someone else's ink, go to Monarch. It will always work. Same thing with the flexo world. If you can't hit a color, you need to go to Monarch and they'll hit it every time. And that's been our claim to fame in those, the conventional printing industries forever. I mean, since the beginning, that's basically what we built our brand and our name on. So we may have, someone may have gone somewhere else for the CMYK ink, which could be made cheaper by your Flints and your Sons of the world, but we would never, ever lose the color business because we were that good. So we just wanted to stick to our knitting and what we were good at, and that is always and always has been best in class. And that starts from our president and works his way down. I mean, that was when we started talking about the inks we were going to develop. His only one question is what's the right way to do it? And once we told him what the right way to do it was, we started talking, yeah, but we could do it this way and either make more margin or hit a different clientele. He goes, but why would you do it that way? He goes, is that the right way to do it or not? And we're like, well, it's not. He goes, then let's not do that. So it's been a mantra of our company, like I said, going back 40, 45 years.
Well, that's
so.
Yeah,
I got a quick question from the question group polls before we go in. It's from Steve. What's everyone's favorite Pantone? It's a goofy question, but I like it. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it out there. I'm a big fan of the cool grays. I love the cool grays pretty much across the board. 7, 11. I also like those numbers together in general. So I'm gonna go with the cool grays. Do either of you have a favorite Pantone color?
I think in hex codes. I'm not a printer. I'm more. I don't know.
Oh, Nick was just outed. He doesn't know his Pantones. We'll give you 114. We'll give you a vibrant yellow. Nick's favorite is Pantone.
Actually, 1235, man, is a really good solid gold. So. If you're into the solid gold and solid gold dancers, so
he's being nicer to you than I am. Aaron, what's your favorite Pantone?
I would have to go with 2602 because that's Monarch purple. So
boom. See, I should have done the right answer and said Printavo's blue, but I'm sticking with my answer. I like cool grays. So awesome. All right. Good goofy question, Steve. I appreciate that one. Sorry, Nick. Please take it away.
Yes, and like I mentioned, I'm not a printer, so Aaron, break it down for me. What is plastisol ink? What's actually in the bucket?
It is this really gooey, drippy mass that no one really knows what to do with. No, it is a mix of polyvinyl chloride, which is otherwise known as PVC. It's that resin along with plasticizers, pigment dispersion, which obviously gives it its color. If it is a low bleed product, it has blowing agents in it. If it's a polyester version, it's got bleed blocking agents in it. Monarch does not add fillers to theirs. So for our specific product, it typically is really creamy and typically lighter than other products that are out on the market. So there has been, for a better part of 15 years, maybe 20 years, the heavier the product, the better it is. That is true if we want to go back to really good ink, which is when we have lead in it. I think everybody will admit when lead used to be in ink, same with paint, it was amazing to print with or paint
pre-phthalates, before that whole.
We're going way back, right?
Before,
we're going way
all
back.
that stuff.
It
worked great.
It was awesome. So back then, yeah, when you added more lead to the ink, it did print better. So there was this mindset where the heavier the ink, the better it was, and the longer it would last. But that's actually not the case today. So in today's world, the heavier the ink is, the more junk I'm putting in it to actually make the raw ingredients go further, if that makes sense. So typically what you'll see is if you do a drawdown using a drawdown bar on like a Lanetta card, you will see a bunch of garbage in the ink. And that's because it's just stuff that's thrown in there to make the raw ingredients go further.
So it's literally kind of like adding water to your Kool-Aid to get a little bit more Kool-Aid, right? When realistically it's just now more watered down, saturated. So a lot of the inks in the market, then you're saying, have a lot more of these kind of fillers to extend it out. Is it just more extender base? Is it just literally another additive they're using as an extender base or like a reducer? Or
no,
is it more at the actual
expensive? All that's expensive stuff to add. No, this is truly just filler. And you can put filler into product that really has no adverse reaction to the ink, other than it typically makes it stiffer. Typically makes it heavier. It makes it crawl up the squeegee a little bit more. So, you know, if you're printing with a fairly heavy ink that climbs up the squeegee and doesn't really come back down, that's typically an ink that's got a fair amount of filler in it. And you'll see a lot of it in whites. So a white that is not bright white, that has kind of got a brown hue to it or a blue hue to it, that's an additive that is actually stuck to the white, because the most expensive part of white is what's called an optical brightener, and that's the most expensive part of the ink.
Right. That's why blues are often used too, because blues are perceived as a white spectrum for most people's eyes. Interesting. So those optic brighteners, those are cheap, or they're saying those are expensive, right? So
no, those are expensive.
So some folks might kind of skimp out on those. So in your opinion, would you say, like, if you do see a white ink that has this light tint to that, it's probably more of a premium ink because they've
I would say
the
whiter. Yeah, the whiter the ink is, and it not blue, but the whiter the ink is, the truer the ink is, at least on a white, right? So, and that is the after cure too. You can't look at it pre-cure. It has to be post-cure.
So and I'm kind of going a little bit off the rails here. It's some things I'm interested in here. I can understand then why a lot of, and I'm not even sure if you folks have this, why a lot of other ink manufacturers may choose to have, again, that premium white and the lower grade white. Because again, are you the top of the pile of shirts? Are you the rest of the pile, right? So Are you the top white, or are you an underbase, right? So does that play any effect in like how Monarch with their whites especially, or do you kind of feel, no, a good white's a good white, top or bottom, you need to use a good white? What's your take on that, I guess?
My take on that, it really depends on the shirt you're printing on. It really does. And also how old of that ink that you're using. And what I mean by old is not necessarily age, but formulation. So ink formulations have changed a ton in the last 15 years. I mean, a ton. So modern inks are very different than inks that have been around for 15, 20 years. They flash differently. They flash significantly faster. You know, you can take an ink that was, you know, considered the fastest flashing ink in the world 15 years ago, and you test it today, it's one of the slower ones. And that's just how formulations have changed. Also, you've got, you know, if you're using a heavier ink, some of those tend to fibrillate a little bit more. Okay, well, that's not going to make a very good bottom or an underbase. That's going to be better of a top coat. But my question to everybody would be, why would you use two inks? I don't understand that. If you've got an ink that's not good enough as a top coat, then why are you using it? It doesn't make any sense. To me,
I don't disagree. Just looking at, and I'm just in devil's advocate on behalf of the shop since they're not talking, is it's not seen, it's underneath, and it's cheaper, and I'm using more of it. I'm printing more shirts that have an underbase of white underneath than I am of shirts that have a white that's showing on top. So why not use a more utility ink that might be cheaper? But like you just said, there's actually a lot of things that go into that I would agree with you. I'd prefer to use the one premium ink because, yeah, it might be cheaper, but what are you sacrificing? Maybe you're slowing down the press because now you got squeegee climb up that squeegee. That's going to have to stop your press, go scrape it off, add those things in there. It might actually cause your top colors not to sit as smooth because it's got more peaks to it. There's a lot of reasons why. I'm just curious to throw it out there as to why Monarch kind of feels that you should have only that premium one. I personally agree. I would prefer to use that as that one pretty much across the board. And not playing favorites, I like everyone's ink. I do use in my shop Monarch inks for the whites, and it's the same white underneath that's going on top just because it's less variables. It's much easier to control. I know what's going down on both. But I can devil's advocate and understand why other folks and other manufacturers might say, we're going to have both options for you, especially if you're going to say, hey, I got to do 20,000 of these and I'm going to use an inline roller anyways. then okay. And if you're going to do some other things and you can get by without that squeegee climb, add a couple additives to it, it's hard to argue, but I would agree. It's better to have the same controlled ink on the bottom and the top, because you know exactly what's going to happen at all times.
And that's our point of view is work smarter, not harder. So if I got to work hard to make a less expensive ink go, and I got to throw some additives into it to make it go, is it really cheaper?
Right. No. Yeah.
And if you look at, cost per print, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've never really understood that either. I've gone into shops and people will ask me, well, can I use this as an underbase? Or is there inks that you can't? I mean, I don't. Some questions I get, to them it makes sense, but to me as an ink manufacturer who's only making an ink that you really only need one for, why would you do that? And I can say a lot of that is just the mindset that we have from our president on the way down, right? And in our other ink categories is, okay, why would I make life more difficult on myself just to save a penny? It doesn't make sense.
Taking a step back, Aaron, let me zoom out a little bit. When you guys, so you're talking about how 15 years ago inks were way different, and then 10 years ago you guys got in space. When you guys are developing a new product, tell us about what that process is like. What are you aiming for? How does that process go? How long does it take? I'm really curious about how you guys make a new thing.
Sure. So let's just go to the very beginning when we first created the Apocalypse series, which was our low temp inks, which is really the backbone of where we started. Is we looked at other inks in the market and went, okay, from a printer's point of view, what is good about these inks and what's bad? And what seems to be working, what seems to not be working. So we ask a lot of printers, hey, what are you guys looking for? And then we go from there. And this is the great thing about not producing our own raw materials, is now we can go out to the 1,000 of different raw material manufacturers out there and go, okay, who's going to produce the best resin or the best plasticizer or the best, where's the best in class at a price point at which we're trying to hit to achieve what we're trying to achieve. So it's not simple, because you've got resins out there, you've got plasticizers out there, you've got, different pigments, you got different dispersions, different blowing agents. I mean, it's a time-consuming process, because you may find all of your ingredients are great except for the one that you're missing, and then when you find the one that seems to perform what you're trying to get it to do, it may not work well with some of the other ones that you already found. So then you got to go back to the drawing board again. So it does take time to produce best in class. That's not something that happens overnight. And then once it becomes best in class, just because I can make it in a lab doesn't mean I can make it in the plant. So then you got to go, okay, well, let's test and see if we can actually produce this in mass. And then you see if you can produce it in mass. Because sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes a formulation I come up with in the lab, I may be able to mix it by hand, but I can't produce it on a large scale. And then from there, you go and send it out to some testing facilities to see, okay, how is it actually going to print both on a manual shop and an auto shop? There may be inks you may create that print great manually, but are horrible on press, and some that are great on an auto, but a manual guy's like, dude, I can't print with this thing. I'm going to have Popeye forearms. So it's trying to create that unique blend that kind of works for everybody. And it's a tough process, because then you got to go through the QC process. And okay, how long is this actually going to take to manufacture? Because if it's going to take me a week to manufacture, I don't want to launch it because it's going to take too long.
I think you said something that's really key there. Y'all hearing feedback at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. All right. Seems like it went away there. Manufacturing versus putting it into actual practice. I love, and not saying anything to them, but I love a lot of these crazy award-winning shirt prints you see, and you're like, wow, there's some folks in Russia that are doing things that are mind-blowing. Like literally, they're bridging. They've got like cogs on a shirt that are like sticking up and like have bridges, all done with screen printing ink, right? But they're producing one shirt in like 3 days, right? It's like, That's neat. That's not actually scalable at all. If I was just paid to make one awesome shirt for 6 months, that'd be a dream job. But we have to make money with producing it. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Aaron, that when you're going in this manufacturing process, yes, you know what you're trying to make, but once you make it, you don't say, I've made it here. You're like, I've made it. Let's make sure it works. Let's actually go test it. Let's put it in people's hands. Let's take that back. So when you are doing that, have you ever had it come back and be like, nope, you said it was good, it's garbage? What does that process look like? And if it hasn't happened yet, if it does happen, what would that process look like? So then take that back. Would you kind of start back from ground zero, or would you say, okay, well, based off the characteristics, we're going to call this product X and then put it out in the market? Because that's honestly how I feel some things go. They go, oh, we want it to be better, but it's only so-so. So here's the name, put it out there. Here's the price point. Let's go back to make something else. And then you end up with all these crazy amounts of SKUs of okay products as opposed to less good products, right? So do you just nix it then? Do you start from scratch, or do you take that approach too of like, what was good about it? Can we market that product to just be expectations to be a little bit different? What does that look like for you folks?
No, every ink we make right out of the gate is perfect.
Nice. I believe you.
No, so typically, every ink we've made that has happened where it's come back, and typically there's always going to be some adjustments that have to be made. But that's not before it goes out to the full market. That's when I say it goes to testing, that's some local printers here that, have an opera who we've made partnerships with that help us in development of those inks. Now, that being said, do some things happen in industry that you did not foresee? Yeah, I will say our first version, which of our super low temp ink, which was called the ULT. The ULT was a phenomenal ink. I mean, phenomenal. As long as you printed with it in a matter of 3 months. Other than that, it started to do some weird things that we did not ever see. Also, it didn't ship well. So until you start shipping it all over the country and all different types of temperatures, you don't really realize, what the market impact is going to be. Now, what Monarch does is realize, okay, if that wasn't best in class, what do we got to do to change that to make it best in class? So ULT quickly became the ULT2 the following year. Yeah. And we've completely gotten rid of the ULT. We are not going to sell something that's a subpar than perfect. So if it is a subpar product, it's no longer on our distribution or manufacturer list.
That's huge. I spent years selling inks, and like I said, I like most ink manufacturers. I'm playing it politically a little bit, but honestly, I've had great success with lots of the different brands that are out there. But one thing that I noticed from a few of them is we got a damn good white. 2 years later, check out our new white. A year later, check out our brand new white. But they're still selling that white and that white and that white and that white. It's like, is this better? Yeah, it's better. Okay, well, why are you selling not as good then? Well, because we got lots of people that already like it. We're not going to upset that whole thing. What? So now I'm having to work with like shops that have inks that are 9, 10, 11 years old from a company that is no longer actually even its own company. It's been bought by another company, and it's kind of like 20-year-old technology in that bucket, right? And they're like, oh, we're having a hard time with our prints. It's like, I bet. So that I think more folks should also look at that. Like, is the white that I'm using or the ink that I'm using the newest version? Is it going to print the best? Or am I feeling complacent because this white has just worked for me for 15 years, right? You don't know if it works better than the newer inks because you haven't tried those yet. You might be slowing yourself down and actually holding back on the product if you haven't at least tested against it. If you test against it and it turns out you don't like it, then stay put then, right? But I think it's important that everyone also looks at that. Why do some of these other ones have so many of the options? I think it's just because they don't want to get rid of SKUs.
Well, I think you actually bring up a good point. And this is not meant to sound offensive. Just because you've been printing for 30 years, A, does not mean you've been printing right for 30 years. And
Ding, ding, ding.
And two, inks that printed 30 years ago, today's modern inks don't print that way or may not print that way. So if you've gone through 10 whites and you still haven't found one that white works for you, it's not the ink, buddy. It's you. And you need to change your process.
I think that's huge for you to say too, as a manufacturer that probably wants people to go to your white, right? Your answer could be, if you've tried 10 whites, you don't like them, try mine, right? But the right answer is what you just said, right? I can go into a shop and I can make it pretty much any bucket of white, if it's been bought new in the last 5 to 10 years, I can make it work well, right? Might cost more, additives to go in there, you might treat it a little bit differently, but you're exactly right. I mean, white ink is not all white inks, but if you've tried all white inks and you're having an issue, don't keep hunting for the white ink, figure out what you're doing wrong. I think it's a very, very important thing to say, and also speaks a lot that you're willing to throw it out there and not just pull the buy mine, because that wouldn't necessarily be the right answer either. And to be fair, some vendors out there will go in and just be like, oh, they're printing it wrong. Well, I'll print this white ink and I'll do it right, and then I'll have that sale. But then when they get their hands on it, it's still not going to print right because they're still doing it wrong, right? It doesn't help anybody then, because now they got a bad taste in their mouth about your ink as well. Go ahead, Nick.
Let me ask you this, guys. How do you compare and evaluate these? So let's say taking out the variable that let's say you're printing correctly. How do you compare and evaluate which one's the best fit for you generally? And then we have a really great question in a second that's more specific.
Okay. So how do you evaluate an ink? That is, you got to, the first thing I think you got to do is have a really good partnership with whoever your vendor is. Not your ink manufacturer, but your vendor, right? So whoever your distributor is that you currently buy your inks from, you've really got to have a really good, solid relationship with them, and work with them. And if you're dealing with a vendor who just wants to sell it to you online and sell it to you the cheapest they possibly can, not really what I would call a solid business partnership. You really want to have that solid. If it costs you an extra couple of bucks per gallon, it's worth it in spades to have a guy or gal or your salesperson be able to come in and be able to work with you to help you print better and be better. That's why our mantra is ink better, print better, be better. Because
live Moss.
Live Moss, right? So
you got to finish it, Aaron.
I do. Can we put some sort of when this goes live, can we put some sort of this is not a copyright infringement upon talk about it?
Keep
you have that good partnership, because first off, you got to make sure you're doing everything the correct way, right? Do I actually have the right durometer squeegee? Am I actually having this correct squeegee angle? Am I actually emulsifying my screens the right way? And just for everybody out there, 1-in-1 is not the right way. I know you may have been printing that way for 30 years and it works for you, but I'm going to tell you right now, that is not the right way. So, am I emulsifying my screens right? Am I having enough off contact? What type of fabric am I printing on? Is it polyester? Is it blends? Is it tri-blends? Is it cotton? What's the majority of the prints that I use? I mean, there's so many different questions that need to go into how to evaluate an ink. Because what you might find out is the right way to print, your current ink may actually not work well, but your prints look better. That's the ultimate goal, at least from a Monarch's point of view, is not only do I want you to be printing with the best ink, whether it's mine or somebody else's, I need you printing the right way because I need the industry looking better, right? I want everybody to be able to print those nice, sharp, beautiful lines that should be there. And if you're doing simulated process, let me help you minimize your dot gain. If you're doing PMS colors, let me show you what an accurate PMS color is and not just accept, well, it's close enough. It's changing the industry mindset to make us better.
Yeah, I agree. This actually leads into, we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into some of these variables with a question here from Juan Garcia. What is the benefit / drawback to using low cure additive to an ink versus using an actual low cure ink? Also, is low cure the same as barrier block? No, it's not. We can go to that too. Also, why does low cure have such limited color options? So let's talk a bit about low cure additive versus low cure ink. And then we can talk about why there might be fewer color options in some of those inks too. But you give me your initial thoughts to Juan, and I'll kind of also jump in with my opinions on those.
Sure. So do I think a low temp additive is bad? No, I don't. And this goes into the realm of I am not in the camp that low temp inks are for everybody, because they're not. So if I am a printer who prints mostly on blends and cottons, I really don't venture into the polyester game. And every once in a while, I may have to get a job where I have to do polyester. And I'm going to turn down my ovens and run low temp because I'm going to throw an additive in there. As long as you emulsify it correctly and make sure you blend it up really good to make sure it's thoroughly through the ink. No, I don't really see there's a bad thing to that. I really don't. Is that something I want to do from a business perspective for every print job? No. Then you're looking at just time. You're also looking at potential of making mistakes. Okay, what ink did I put this additive in, and which ink did I not put it in? And am I sure I put it into all inks that I just put on the screen? Because guess what? If you missed one, you just screwed up a bunch of shirts. Also the problem with that is, you're turning your ovens up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. Okay, what's the point of that, right? So if I am a printer who is printing on 70+% of my work is polyester, or even 60% plus of my polyester, at that point in time, we're gonna have a business discussion on whether or not it's worth it. But let's just say 70% of what you print on is polyester. Hands down, you wanna go low temp inks, especially if you're printing spot colors, which most polyester guys aren't. Yep, you're gonna set your ovens at 280 and forget it. And you're done. You're not messing, you're not switching back and forth, you're not making all these different errors, because guess what? The other problem is you got to set your flashes at a different flash temp and a different flash time. So if I'm flopping back and forth between low temp and standard cure temp, I'm telling you right now, I've seen it 1,000 times. It's a nightmare, and ultimately mistakes get made. So
yeah, even if you've got higher end equipment, newer equipment that might even have presets that you can do, a lot of the new ovens will have where you can kind of say, okay, setting 1 is for cotton, setting 2 is for poly, right? And it'll adjust the belt speed and all that kind of stuff. But that works perfect if you never make a mistake and you don't forget to do it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of variables in life. Humans are full of error, right? They're going to forget to do it at one point or another point, and it can cause a problem. I in my shop and the shops I've run in the past, we've done predominantly cotton, and then we have some poly thrown in the mix. So I've just got a low cure ink that I'm going to have, or I'll say, okay, it's colors. I have to go ahead and just mix those colors and add that low cure additive to it. So I think like you said, it's good to have both. Definitely look at what you're doing. If you're predominantly doing things that need to be low cure, polys especially, it makes more sense just to have that ready to go and kind of set things the best that you can, make them repetitive and repeatable across the board. Now, I want to quickly address something too that you had brought up, and it's definitely a good point, but I think some people had some questions. So you say not to do 1-on-1 when coating the screen. Do you recommend 2-over-1 or 2-over-2? My answer to that is those are erroneous numbers. Ignore those numbers. If I coat a screen 1-over-1, 2-over-1, 2-over-2, then Aaron does it, then Nick does it, and then we actually let them go dry, and then actually measure how many microns they are. If we all did 2-over-1, they're different still. Right? So there isn't really a single answer. The best way is to actually have, again, one of those partners that you're going to have with your distribution to come to your shop and help you figure out what that correct stencil thickness looks like. See if they can bring in a micrometer. See if you can buy a micrometer, right? They're kind of expensive, so see if they can bring theirs and help you out for the day and then leave with it. But those things are important. Now, if those aren't options, I personally recommend what I call the Dennings method. Dave Dennings from Kiwa Ulano taught me this years and years back. It's where you coat the screen. You always are going to start the coating from the t-shirt facing side first. You coat that screen, and this is for plastisol mostly. It's a little bit different when you go into water-based predominantly, right? But you coat that side of the screen until the ink side is glossy. So I'm in the dark room, safe lights. I'm coating the t-shirt facing side until I have a glossy finish on the inside. That means all the actual knuckles of the mesh have been encapsulated. I'm then going to, once I hit that spot, could be 1, could be 2, could be 3, could be 4, right? It doesn't really matter. It's when do I look at it and it's no longer a matte finish, it's glossy. Then I'm going to do a single hit on the inside, the ink side, to push that gasket down to the t-shirt facing side, giving me a good stencil that I can actually have, and it's repeatable. I'm looking for that to be glossy, and then I know it's time to do one the other way. That's going to make things a little bit more repeatable from having different folks that might be doing it. Now, best answer out there, get an autocoder. Figure out what that looks like, have somebody come with a micrometer, have it set so the same angle, same speed, all that stuff, time and time and time again. That way you're more repetitive. But anyone who's like, oh yeah, let's do a 1/1 or a 1/2. Cool, that's a lot of variables. Sharp side, rounded side. How strong are you? How fast are you going? What's the angle the screen's at? What's the angle the trough's at? Those are not good answers. So I'm always careful of is 1/1 good? Is 2/1 good? Is 2/2 good? They could all be good based on how good you are, how practiced you are, and if you've checked what you're doing is actually accurate. But there's just kind of all over the place there. So we can shift it back over to the ink side though, and dive
well, I
back
can answer
in.
that a little bit from an ink side point of view.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's definitely generic. I can just say what I have seen that works. Mm-hmm. And again, same thing. I had an emulsion guy explain this to me as well. Is the whole part of it is if you're going to stroke and put your emulsion on more than one pass, you're trying to get a build. If you're using the sharp side, you're scraping the emulsion back off, so you're not really getting a build. So if you're using the dull side, and when you're applying it, you're getting a build. So if I wish I could put up on the screen, it's a graphic on how the art of screen printing actually works. And in my opinion, why I think your inkwell on top should match your inkwell on the bottom. So the art of screen printing is not mashing as hard as I can ink through a screen using guardrails. Basically, okay, as long as I put emulsion on there, so when I burn the image, there's a guardrail there that ink won't go, right? That's not screen printing. That is mashing ink through a screen and somehow making an image on a shirt. Screen printing, the art of it, is actually having just enough squeegee pressure so that what I'm doing is I'm taking the inkwell that's on the top of the screen, which is on the squeegee side. I'm transferring that ink to the inkwell that's on the bottom of the screen. And then by that process, that inkwell that's on the bottom of the screen, because I took the inkwell that's on the top of the screen, gets deposited then onto the shirt. And it gets laid onto the shirt. It's not mashed into the shirt, right? So the whole goal of that screen printing, the art of screen printing, is that 3 steps of, inkwell on top to inkwell on the bottom to then onto the shirt. If you can see any ink on the back side of that shirt after you've screen printed, your squeegee pressure is way too high. And if it's that high, you may want to look at how, what your image looks like with your emulsion. If you can't feel a stencil on both sides with your fingernail, you didn't put enough emulsion on.
Mm-hmm. I will definitely say that is true until you get into the water-based realm. That changes drastically because it's such a different. You're dealing with more dot loss than you are dot gain with how that works. But I couldn't agree more. Exactly what you. Yeah, because I couldn't agree more. It's exactly that. You need to fill the gasket, drop the gasket. If you're just treating it like nothing other than a stencil, that's a problem. You're not making a stencil. You're making a gasket. You're making an area for the ink to actually well into and then be deposited smooth and keep a nice, you want the RZ right there. You want the smooth surface. So absolutely if you're just kind of coating it to coat it just to make a stencil, well then that's going to work, but you're going to probably have a hard time going into higher detail work, more predictability. Things like that are going to be a little bit tougher for you, but it also does depend. Like if you're just doing this print all day, you can get by with just a stencil, right? It's not the right way, but it'll work. So yeah, definitely a lot more insight in how your ink works. And that kind of goes back to Juan's question originally too, is like, how do you know if it's a good ink? Well, you could be putting a good ink through a crap process and you might say it's a bad ink when really it was a good ink. Your process was crap, right?
Yep.
But it also does depend on, again, are you printing this all day, every day? Is it worth putting all that energy and time into that? Or is it working just fine? Or are you trying to grow to get into higher detailed printing and trying to become better at what you're doing? Then those variables definitely need to be looked at. But I'm always cautious to say a product's not good until I can for sure make sure that I've tested it out correctly in all variables. And that's really hard for anybody to say they've ever really done, right? That's where we rely on the manufacturers to do that stuff for us, to say this is good, and then you kind of band behind someone who you know is good and you can trust.
Well, I did notice Juan had another question on the low temp on, why is there such limited color options in low temp inks? Monarch does not. So Monarch has both a PMS blending system for both low temp and a standard cure temp. So it doesn't really matter whether you're printing standard cure temp or low temp. It's all the same formulations, and you just go on our website and you can print whatever PMS color you want. So it's not really, there's not really a limited color per se in low temps, at least as far as Monarch's concerned.
Perfect.
Now, Aaron, I want to go back a little bit to more of the relationship you were talking about. You're saying that the vendor partnership is one of the main ways to make evaluate your ink. So my question is, what makes a good relationship between an ink supplier and a print shop? What can one do to support the other? So not just what does the ink supplier have to do, but what does like a model customer for Monarch look like?
Sure. So I think it kind of goes into how Monarch evaluates distributors as well on, who makes a good distributor for Monarch. I think that's another way to look at that as well. And it's really, you got to look at it as a business partnership, not solely dollars and cents. So dollars and cents, in my opinion, again, as a business owner, you can't really just say, okay, dollars and cents is secondary, but it kind of is, because the reality of it is am I willing to spend $1 or $2 more to have someone as an advisor showing me what I could be doing better, how I can be more efficient? I'm not just talking about ink here. I'm talking about, inks, emulsions, spray tack, whether I want to use spray tack, whether I want to use some other sort of adhesive, whether we're talking about shirts, whether we're talking about, whatever it is, squeegees, machines, it doesn't matter. On all aspects of your shop, how can I be more efficient? And how can I be more profitable? So their job as a good business partner is to be an advisor to you, going, hey, here's how you can be better. Let me take some time in your shop and see what we can do to improve your process. It may take some time because sometimes it's not that obvious. And I'm not just talking about the print side. I can also be talking about the post-print side. So who am I going to partner up with who can give me that? So I think you should be evaluating your business partnerships as well as evaluating your inks. I mean, to me, inks is a very small portion of the equation.
As someone who spent 6 years selling ink, and I sold a couple different manufacturers of ink. That's actually how I came across Monarch. Is we were years back starting to look at Monarch. I tested out. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But being the person who sold ink for years and other consumables, not all distributors are built the same. Not saying there's not literally dozens of fantastic places to buy equipment and consumables from, but there's also a dozen that aren't, in my opinion, right? Because they're just going to sell you a bucket and here's the literature the manufacturer makes on how to use that bucket of ink. Sorry, other than that, I got nothing for you, right? That's not helpful. The ones that have people that are technical, maybe they're boots in the ground, maybe they're just able to actually answer a phone call, right? As long as you have one of those two and they're knowledgeable and they're willing to get in there and like either help troubleshoot, shoot me a picture, let's talk through this, or if they're able to actually go into your facility and help you troubleshoot those two things, you need to have one of those at least. Either someone you can rely on and call that you can send pictures to, here's what's going on, or even better, someone who can show up in your shop and do these things. If you are cheap, right, and I get it, times are rough right now too, but if you're looking at them and saying, hey, look, this other distributor can give me a similar product and it's $30 cheaper for a 5. Okay, well, you start doing that enough, and now that person who's going into your shop, who's trying to help build you up to make you better, because the better you are, the better they look, right? You're starting to be cheap with them. They're going to start to pull back. And is that $30 for that 5 going to also come with somebody who's knowledgeable? It's also going to be in your shop once or twice a quarter or whatever that might be to check in on you, or are they just kind of shipping it to you and you're never going to get better, right? So it's important to look at those things, like Aaron said. Also, sure, if you need to be like, hey, look, buddy, I love what you do. I'm just seeing 4 or 5 other competitors that are willing to also give me support and bring that price down. Can we meet in the middle or something? That's a fine conversation. But just starting nickel and diming your distributor, if they're good and they're helpful to you, try to not do that so much, because basically you're getting free consulting out of them. And as someone who spent years going into hundreds of shops, I was doing anywhere from 3 to 7 shops a day until I got to the point where I was booked out and having to do 1 or 2 shops a day, but I was booked 3-4 weeks out at a time, right? They gain a lot of knowledge seeing a product be used in so many different ways, on so many different presses, on so many different substrates, that's a capture of data that you can't have running one shop. Right. So make sure that you're utilizing people. Like I said, they don't necessarily have to be boots on the ground. There are people that are mostly online ones that still have phenomenal people that are there fielding the questions and helping out, and have spent years and years and years in shops too. But if you're not able to rely on someone to say, hey, this ain't working, help, and actually get good, usable feedback that you can go improve your process with, you probably don't have a good distributor, right? So just be aware of what you're looking at. How are they looking at their manufacturers? If that's how they're distributing, do they care about their manufacturers that they're working with as well, right? So I think it kind of does go from top down, from manufacturers choosing good distributors and good distributors working well with shops. So
well, I think to add to that, it's also, what are your customers like? What are you looking for in a good customer as a printer? Are you looking for a customer who's constantly nickeling and diming you to death? Probably not. So if that's not the customers that you're looking for, then why are you looking for vendors that are that way? You know what I mean? So you just got to look at, okay, stay consistent throughout the entire supply chain and go, okay, if I am going to be best in class, and that's where I aim to be, don't I then want a best in class supplier of products to me so that they can help me stay best in class? I think so. You've just got to stay consistent through that entire process.
Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. I guess let me bring it to the bottom line. I'm on the sales team at Printavo. How can I make more money picking the right ink? Is it what we've been talking about, where you choose the ink that's most cost effective? Is it a place for an upsell? How does the relationship between you and your ink manufacturer make you more money at the end of the day if you're a screen printer?
Well, so the way you make more money is not cost reduction. That's how you save money. That's not how you make money. How you make money is, at the end of the day, if I'm able to produce and get out the door 300 more shirts than I was yesterday with the same amount of people, I just made more money. That's how you make more money. So if I'm going to make more money, having that partnership with a good distributor and using good products to do that, and that helps me to get out 300 more shirts, does it make a difference if I just save $2 on a gallon? Makes no difference, because that extra $300 a shirt a day is all profit. So if I'm able to do that, and through a partnership be shown how to produce more shirts with the same equipment, with the same number of people, then I win. And
Yeah, Well said and very accurate. When you look at your day-to-day stuff, do you go, oof, bills are tight this month. I better cancel Netflix. Hell no. You keep Netflix, right? You go figure out how to make an extra 30, 40, 50 bucks to cover your bills that month, right? I think it's always less about cost reduction. I mean, look at cost things, make sure you're not like overpaying like crazy. But if you're going to start nickel and diming your consumables, you're probably not focusing correctly. And I agree. I think, Aaron, you said it eloquently with your response there. That was great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Segueing to a different topic. So let's imagine now people watching, they have their ink supplier, they know what they're doing. Victoria's asking us, we had it on our list too. How's Monarch dealing with ink ingredient shortages? Is there any speculation as to when the ink shortages will end? Will not be such a big issue?
Okay, so this is a big question because it's not just raw ingredient shortages. So let's just talk about the industry as a whole. Let's just talk let's look at the market as a whole. Let's look at the US marketplace as a whole. I go order a couch from a furniture store that says it's in stock, right? It still may take me 6 months to get that couch. Why is that if it's in stock? So have any of you seen any of the cameras that give you a live view of the port of Long Beach? The port of Long Beach today, it used to take roughly 2 weeks to get through the port of Long Beach. Today, it's in upwards of 7 weeks. So if you look at raw ingredient manufacturers, most of them are offshore. Very few of them are here in the United States. And the ones that are in the United States have even more have different problems and more significant problems than the ones that we're importing. So that in and of itself, it's taking time where there's no trucks, there's no truckers. You can't put a container on a train anymore and put it and ship it to the East Coast. You just can't. They're requiring you today to take everything that's in a container, repack it into a trailer, into an LTL carrier, then ship it. Well, that adds a significant amount of time to being able to, in regards to shipments. I can tell you firsthand, trying to get a trucking company to our facility just to ship ink. Some days proves difficult. Some days they just don't show up at all. And I think we're dealing with similar process across the board in all the different countries. It's people. It's lack of personnel. Think of your facility today. How many people down are you? No one that I know of today is at full staff. Very few. And if you wanted to add, try adding someone to your staff. Put an ad out there. See how many people you actually get to reply to your ad. It'll be almost nobody. So when you're short of people, it makes it really tough to get products to market, especially when the demand is really high. So that is both in raw ingredient as well as production. Unfortunately, as an ink manufacturer, you don't get a heads up on when a raw ingredient is going to be short. It just doesn't ship. Or it just doesn't arrive when it's supposed to arrive. Or it doesn't arrive in the quantity in which you ordered it. Raw ingredient manufacturers are a different beast. Stuff just shows up. So if I ordered a tanker of a specific raw ingredient and 4 drums show up, I was never notified in advance. So now that completely hoses my manufacturing for that given week or month or whatever. And you can get some ideas of, some shortages coming up. But again, do any of us see the, gallon shortage that we had a month ago where you couldn't even get a gallon container? Okay, well, I can make all the ink in the world I want, but if I can't put it in a container, I can't get it to anybody. So it's just a different thing all the time. And it's this happy dance that we're all playing, trying to ensure continuity of supply. And I think we're all, as a group, we're doing a good job as best we can manage. I think some companies are doing a better job of managing that crisis than others. But it's a different crisis almost for all of us. It's not the same crisis. One of us who might be dealing with a titanium shortage, the other guy isn't. One guy who might be dealing with a gallon shortage, the other guy isn't. Well, we're all unanimously can't find a trucker to save our life. So, it's a different issue for everybody. All I can say is part of it too is expansion, right? So non-COVID, great. I need to expand. I need to double my production tomorrow. Okay, it'll be about 2 to 3 weeks. At most, maybe 6 weeks, and I can get all that stuff in, order it all, have it all installed. We're up and going in 6 to 8 weeks. Well, okay, I'm asking your printers out there. If you order any of the equipment manufacturers that are out there today, if I were to order a new press, how long is it going to take to get it in?
It's like 24 to 40 weeks is where it's all at right now.
Okay, so I can't increase my production for 20 to 24 weeks. I can't do it tomorrow. You know what I mean? So it's tough to manage. And then if you don't have any people to actually man that new equipment, that is also a difficulty. So, the ultimate question is, great, when's this going to end? How do I manage through it? So I would say manage through it this way. Don't hoard. That doesn't help anybody. It's the same thing with, toilet paper at Costco, right? You don't need 15 rolls of toilet paper that's going to last you for the next 2 years. You don't need that. You may buy a little bit more, probably because you're going to be producing more. So sure, get a little bit more than you normally do. So if I normally go through a 5 a week, great. Get 2 5s and see how long that lasts you. But don't go out and order a drum of ink. That doesn't do you any good. And it doesn't do anybody else any good. Because guess what?
It makes it worse.
It makes it worse. It makes it worse for everybody. So similarly to what we're dealing with in the supply chain, just order normal. Now, that being said, I would also have a backup ink manufacturer that you've also tested, and that's approved. So God forbid that current supplier is not available at that particular week because that particular distributor had not gotten their shipment yet. Okay, have that backup and already have it tested. And then once your primary ink comes back in, great, go back to that. But, you cannot be at this stage, no matter, as an ink manufacturer, I'd love for you to be Monarch loyal and all things Monarch. And maybe you can. But I'm just saying, do yourself a favor and have a backup ink tested. So God forbid, supply somehow runs short, you already know where you can go. And you already have that backup planned.
And don't burn bridges with your vendors, because you want to be able to say, oh, my preferred vendor's out of a product. I already just pissed off the last vendor by nickel and diming them too much, and now I got to go ask them for help. How likely are they going to want to help me, who's been a pain in their butt, right? So it's all a game of like, be real, be you, be honest, but keep doors open, and exactly have plan Bs and plan Cs. If Monarch's your go-to choice, but for some reason your distributor can't get you Monarch right now, make sure you know what you're going to supplement that with for the next week or two until you can get that shipment back in.
Well, I can tell you
and don't plan it then.
Well, and from a distributor point of view, the number one thing you can communicate accurately is accurate usage rate. So if you know you're going to go through 4 5s a week or 1 5 a week, make sure you're telling your sales rep that. Make sure he knows exactly what your usage is going to be. Because the reality of it is this, it's going to take them 8 to 12 weeks to get that ink shipment in. How much he orders in is really dependent upon how accurately you can communicate what your usage rate is. And if you can accurately communicate to that, he will ensure that he's ordering in enough to make sure that you're well taken care of.
Ideally, if you've got a good relationship with a good distributor, yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Well, yeah, we are at right about a time, but I got a good one to ask you here, Aaron, to sort of think about the future, think about the days when this is not as much of an issue, these shortages. We're wondering what's on the horizon for ink manufacturing, and how long do you anticipate the current manufacturing climate to last? Great
question. Current economic, if I was Nostradamus, I would have a better idea, but I can't see this ending anytime soon. I'm hopeful maybe the middle of next year, Maybe. I think we need to see some policy changes. There's other stuff at play here that ultimately are hurting or helping the current situation. But I would love to see it end middle of next year. I really don't see it ending before then. If it does, I will gladly be wrong. But it could easily last well into 2023. So learn how to deal with this current crisis, because this may be your business, your current business environment for the foreseeable future. So what's on the horizon for Monarch? Another very good question. I will say there's really not a need for Monarch to create new products when our current offerings are just now getting into the market in regards to being saturating the market. I think everybody's starting to understand what the Monarch brand means and how it makes their facility different and better. And I think that in and of itself, I think we'll continue to see that for the next 2 to 3 years. But if there is something out there that someone needs us to create, I will tell you right now, from an ink offering standpoint, if there's a market for it, we'll make it, and we'll make the best in class. Everyone has asked us, hey, you're really high opaque, plastisol inks. Can you make that into water-based? If and when the water-based market justifies another vendor into that market space, we will probably venture into that. But right now, the ink, the water-based ink market is not big enough to even, the 5 main players that are in water-based now, they themselves aren't producing enough volume to justify the 5 vendors that are currently in it. So there's really not a big enough market to justify us jumping in that. But if there is, absolutely, we're in. And I'd say that's where Monarch is we'll continue to do what we do and make it better. If there's a way to make our inks more opaque, I can't imagine, because they're the most opaque inks on the market today.
Go back to that lead.
Go back to if lead, all of a sudden back into ink, we're in. I don't see that one happening either, but you just have to know from a Monarch standpoint is we will always produce best in class products for the market. And if for whatever reason someone produces a better in class product than we currently have in market, that's probably where we'll go next, because that sounded like a challenge. So we're going to have to up our game a little bit and make it better.
Love it.
That sounds great. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for all the amazing information. And I think that hopeful note at the end, I think we're all waiting for the day when the supply shortages are no longer affecting folks. And folks, thank you for watching. Everybody in the audience, we are here every other week, and we'll be back again soon for another episode. And Matt, I'll let you, newly engaged, I'll let you have the last word here. Anything else you want to share with the crowd?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, this was a very, very informational episode. I hope everyone really, really took all that stuff. Aaron, you put a couple things very, very well. We had some comments in there saying well put. Good way to look at business. A lot of times I know running a shop, there's just so many damn variables, and having to this one, my printer likes this one better. Just run it, right? That is a Band-Aid that's okay to do when you just need to get through the crap storm that is maybe that day, right? But it's always best to push ourselves, be better, do better, live Moss, right? But I really urge y'all to take a look at all these different variables that you're looking at. Regardless of what ink manufacturer you're choosing to use it the best that you can. Make sure that you're giving it its best opportunity to perform for you as well. Look at all your variables. Try to always, every day, take those small steps to increase what you're doing, help your profitability, help your product, help your customers, be the best printer you can be the best shop owner you can be. Just every day, try to do the best you can. So I appreciate you dropping some serious knowledge nuggets on everybody today, Aaron. And looking forward to learning more about your product, seeing your product go out in the market more and more, and we'll all be watching. So thanks so much, folks. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, folks. Thanks again, Aaron. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Talk to you later.